Hello and welcome to ThePapare.com once again as we look forward to the Rugby World Cup 2015. It's going to be a fantastic tournament and I've got some fantastic guests lined up to discuss this tournament with me. Joining me in the studio today is Jayan Goonathilake and he's one of our rugby analysts on ThePapare as well. You've written a great piece on code swappers, Jayan, guys that have come from Rugby League to Rugby Union, and Sam Burgess is the big story. Do you think those guys are going to make a big difference, these crossovers?
Yeah, Sam Burgess seems to be the next big thing in English rugby, and there's been a lot of hype obviously about his inclusion in the squad. There are lots of opinions about whether he's had enough time in Union, whether he'll make an impact. But I mean, Sam Burgess is a phenomenal athlete, and everyone knows what he's capable of. And like himself, like Sonny Bill Williams, all these players do bring a different element to the game of Union, and I think. It'll be interesting to see how much game time he gets under Stuart Lancaster, but I think that he definitely has what it takes to make it big on the world stage.
Well, I for one will be really surprised if he doesn't get at least one yellow card in this tournament, and he seems to think that tackling doesn't need to involve arms.
Yeah, a few yellow cards and the opposition will have a few sore blue spots to show for it too. But it all contributes to, I believe, make this World Cup arguably the most competitive World Cup we've had since the inception in 1987.
And there's been a lot of players that have really made the grade, isn't it, from across the globe. And one of the players one of the positions that we're looking at in this World Cup in particular is the fly half. You've got to have a mercurial fly half to really win you a tournament. You had Johnny Wilkinson who won it in 2003. You had Stransky who won it with that drop goal in 1995. You had Daniel Carter who did most of the business in 2011. You had Michael Liner back in 91. Who do you think is going to shine from the fly halves this time?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because we also had a fourth choice fly half who was on a fishing trip come and kick the winning penalty at the last World Cup. The fly half position in today's game is virtually it's as equivalent to being a pilot on a plane now. And I believe that, Dan Carter, there are question marks about his ability, but in the last game against the Wallabies, he sent us a timely reminder on what he really can do. So I believe that he will be very instrumental in deciding how far the All Blacks get this year. I believe that it's going to be a very, very tough ride for them. But across the other teams, you get some phenomenal talent. You have the likes of Henry Pollard for the Springboks. You have the likes of George Ford playing for England, who's come a long, long way. So, it's a game of small margins, and it'll be interesting to see who holds their nerve in those vital moments.
One guy who nobody's really talking about, Jonathan Sexton, has really brought the Irish team, brought them all the way up to number 2 in the world at one stage. Do you fancy Ireland getting through to a semi, Jan?
Well, if they get anywhere near a semi, Shanaka, Jonathan Sexton will have a lot to do with it, because without him, Ireland is just not the same side. They play a very kicking-oriented game. They play with the concept of trying to get into the opposition's half, get into their 22, and then take it from there. So I believe that injury aside, he will have a big influence on the Irish game plan. And well, if they do beat France, expect to see his name spread across the back pages, because that's the only way they'll probably do it.
Let's talk about try scorers in a minute, but let's talk about try preventers. Defenses usually win games, Jan, especially at the business end of the tournament. You don't get a bucket load of tries, you get guys making a lot of tackles. Who do you think are going to be the top defenders in this tournament?
Who do I believe? I think England have gone with Brad Barrett for that very purpose. Brad Barrett is, in my opinion, somewhat limited when it comes to attacking play, but his defense is unquestionable. He's a phenomenal defender. And likewise, you get people like Ma Nonu and Conrad Smith who are pretty strong in defense and don't let too many people through. And come the knockout stage of the World Cup, it's all about scoring one more point than the opposition. So I think teams like South Africa have won World Cups. England have won World Cups based on their defense. So Barrett for me will be one standout player. And that's probably one of the reasons why teams like France don't win as much as they used to, because their defenses have been very poor. I think Australia will also be strong. Australia has come a long way, even though they lost badly in the last game. I think the rugby has come, and Coach Chika has brought a different dimension to their game.
And what about the scavengers, guys like Hooper, Pocock, Warburton, Tipperick, Richie McCaw himself, Sam Kane, if he features, Francois Lowe, Henrik Brousseau. Are these flankers going to be important this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I was very scared, Chanaka, because I was very worried for the game, because it seemed like that breakaway terrier flanker was moving away from the game, from the international game. A lot of teams going for bulk rather than that real, like you said, that scavenger, the breakdown. But, you have some teams now playing two of them in the same team, like Australia did, playing Pocock as well as Hooper in the same game. I believe that they will play they'll play a huge role in taking their teams further, because at the breakdown, the teams giving away the most number of penalties are the teams that are going to really suffer. And it may just come down to a penalty or two that separates one team from the other, and calm the business and the tournament. The role of the poacher will be very important.
Well, one thing we all want to talk about is tries, and finally we'll come to those. Jayan, who do you think are going to be the main attacking threats, the guys who are up there on the leaderboard in terms of tries?
Well, I would think that guys like Israel Folau are just waiting to be set free in a World Cup. I think he's a phenomenal ball carrier. Then we have the likes of Nehe Milner-Skudder, who had a fantastic Super 15, and he's got quite a step on him, Shanaka. I'm sure you're a big fan of his as well. So there are, people like that, people like Jesse Creel, with a lot of gas to burn. Those days it used to be a case of seeing the likes of Brian Habana run circles around people, but there's some serious pace out wide in the wings. And I believe those players, like I said, like even Johnny May, who's got some blistering pace, and the All Blacks won't forget him in a hurry. So the Northern Hemisphere sides also have their own players like Wesley Fofana, Johnny May. They all have what it takes to run around defences.
George North.
George North, he'll either run around you or through you. So I mean, there's so much of talent out there that. It will be, like I said, it will come down to the defenses to see, and probably the best defense might really win the World Cup.
So you say one of the most even tournaments that we've had?
I would say by some distance. Those days we had a case where, when you looked at the draw, you knew who the top two teams were going to be, and you knew what the quarterfinal was going to be, and the semi-final was going to be, and so on. But this year, that third place team it's probably as good as the second place team, or even in some cases, like in the pool of death, it's probably as good as the first place team. So I think we're in for quite a few surprises, and I have a feeling that the Pacific Island nations would have a bit to say about this tournament.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have a role to play in how these tournaments progress. They'll have a role to play in how injured the favorite teams get as well, the physical style of rugby that they play. Jayan, thanks a lot for joining us here on ThePapare.com. A lot more continued coverage on RWC 2015 when we come back on ThePapare.